Good morning and a very warm welcome to the LPI and to this Learning Live digital event hosted by Open LMS. Just checking that you can hear my audio. I'm just checking that we have our attendees on today's Learning Live digital event. So if you have just joined us, a very, very warm welcome to you. If you just pop your name and where you're calling from into the chat, always great to see where you're calling in from today. And also just to check that you can hear me nice and clear as well. So my name is Sheppard. I'm the Learning and Development Manager here at the LPI, and I'll be your host up until the hour where I'll hand you over to our expert panel on today's event. So we'll be joined by Michael Vaughn, Adoption and Education Specialist at Open LMS, and looking and exploring the AI landscape beyond ChatGPT. As we know, ChatGPT grabs many headlines about generative AI. It represents just one tool in the broad AI landscape. This session aims to broaden your understanding of AI technologies beyond ChatGPT, as well as their applicability in L&D programs. You'll also explore multiple AI technologies, including a fair overview of their unique beliefs and potential challenges. And we'll also examine how these technologies can function synergy with ChatGPT to create a robust and diversified L&D strategy. You'll also be, and Michael will be also expanding knowledge on the variety of AI technologies available to use in L&D beyond ChatGPT and assess the specific benefits and potential challenges of various AI technologies in L&D context. And also understand and identify those synergies between different AI technologies and ChatGPT. So we're going to be joined by Michael on the hour. So before then, just welcoming our attendees into the session today. So if you can hear me, I would just love to hear where you're calling from. So just pop your name and where you're calling from into the chat, as it's always great to see where our L&D professionals are calling in from today. All Learning Live digital events are free to attend, and you can find previous recordings on the website on some truly inspiring sessions from L&D professionals from around the world. As we know, L&D budgets are often quite tight, so that's why we've made all Learning Live digital online sessions completely free to attend. So just pick a session from our calendar and register. It's as easy as that, and we're not limiting you to a time window. Learning Live digital events are scheduled all year round, meaning that you can dip in and out whenever you wish. So never miss a session, and all Learning Live digital events are recorded so that you can watch them back at your convenience. Previous recordings are available to LPI members only. So if you're not a member of the LPI, this is one of the benefits that you are going to be able to go back and look at past recordings, but also being a member of the Global Body for Workplace Learning Professionals. Since we've relaunched our membership benefits, we've tripled the number of these, added a new membership dashboard, including an events management service, built-in free access to LPI Learn, which is our digital academy for L&D professionals. Also have many discounts for hybrid working apps, content creation, hardware and accessories, and we're adding more benefits monthly for high street stores, L&D technology, well-being and more. So if you're in learning development and you're not a member of the LPI, we are here to help. So please, there's a link there. I think my colleague has popped that just in there. Thank you, Michael, to join the global community of learning superstars today. So I can just see that we've got lots of people just coming into the room now. So Alison from Northampton, nice to have you with us. James, hi James, calling in from West Yorkshire, lovely to have you with us. So lovely to have all of our L&D professionals joining into the session today. So Michael Vaughn is an adoption and education specialist at Open LMS, where he helps L&D administrators and instructional designers effectively leverage learning tools and platforms. With over 15 years of experience in the field, Michael has served as an LMS trainer and administrator at public, private and community colleges, schools, and has helped clients develop and apply instructional technology skills. Michael's an accomplished speaker and presenter, having delivered trainings on a wide array of topics, including AI, ChatGPT, and designing better presentations, core principles for accessible design, and making education and improving DIY instructional videos. Michael's also been a guest on several podcasts and webinars, sharing his expertise and insights into a wide audience. And in addition to his work at Open LMS, Michael has made significant contributions to the field of education. Michael has served on the advisory grant from the Howard Hughes Medical Institute, and Michael has also co-founded Elon University's first makerspace, where he helped establish a grant program for student makers. And this year, Michael will also be one of our guest speakers at Learning Live, the LPI's Learning Live conference in September on AI, and will also be located on booth 40 within the Learning Live exhibition this year. So we're really excited to have Michael join us on the hour to explore the AI landscape beyond ChatGPT. You can join the LPI and our panel of experts within L&D on the topics to upskill yourselves and share these within your organisations. Michael Strawbridge and I host events once or twice per week, and as I said, they are always free to attend. We'll be starting at 12 o'clock, session duration today, 45 minutes. If you have just joined us, a very, very warm welcome to you on behalf of the LPI and this session hosted by Open LMS. And if you have just joined us, just pop your name, where you're calling from, into the chat. Always great to see where our L&D professionals are calling in from today. So I can see Matt is calling in from Bristol. Lovely to have you with us. Michelle from Glasgow and Suzanne from Aberdeen. So lovely to have you with us. And Silky, hope I've pronounced your name right, calling in from Germany. Mike from New Hampshire, lovely to have you with us. So lots of our international L&D professionals calling in from today as well. So lovely to have you with us. Ray from Northern Ireland, Katari from Kent, nice to have you with us. And Luke from Washington in the UK. Sarah's calling in from London. Lots of people calling in from the US over to the UK and into Europe as well. And as far as our African colleagues as well calling in from there. So again, lots of our colleagues calling in. So lovely to have you all with us. So we're going to be joined on the hour. So not long now to wait until we explore the AI landscape beyond ChatGPT with Michael Vaughn, adoption and educational specialist. So as we know, ChatGPT grabs many headlines about generative AI. It represents just one tool in that broad AI landscape, as we're discovering with many things that are sort of facing and challenges that are facing the L&D profession at this time. So this session will aim to broaden your understanding of AI technologies beyond ChatGPT, as well as their applicability in L&D programs. So you'll also be able to explore multiple AI technologies, including a fair overview of their unique beliefs and potential challenges, and also examine how these technologies can function in synergy with ChatGPT to create a robust and diversified L&D strategy. So lovely to have you all with us. I'm just making it a couple of minutes now just before we are joined by Michael. So if you have just joined us, a very, very warm welcome to you. Just a little bit of housekeeping rules. If I could just ask you to remain on mute today during today's session so that Michael can give us his undivided attention. And if you do have any questions as we go through today, just pop those into chat and Michael will be able to answer as many of your questions as he possibly can during today's session. So without further ado, I'd like to hand you over to Michael. Welcome, Michael.
Thanks so much, Scott. I really appreciate the warm welcome this morning. Go ahead and get camera on there and we'll share our screen. I probably made this joke last time, but I lovingly call this the Ouija portion of the presentation, right? Can you see me? Can you hear me? But it looks like everything's up on the preview for me. Perfect.
Excellent. All good to go, Michael.
All right. Well, thank you, Scott. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Katina, for the really strong partnership to help make sessions like this happen. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be joining from. I really appreciate you all sharing your time with us today. And thanks to those of you who are coming from a repeat. When we came to do the session back in April about the rise of AI and ChatGPT and learning and development programs, and you've chosen to come to this session as a follow-up, we really appreciate it. Scott did a really beautiful introduction there for me. So I think just my highlights are I'm an adoption education specialist with OpenLMS. Been working in higher education and educational technology for over a decade and a half at this point. I'm kind of popular on social media. I got about 900,000 followers there. Love presenting and training. Got two really incredible kids. And I think given time, that's about as far as I will go with the rest of that introduction. So again, thanks to those of you who came to the Rise of AI and ChatGPT and L&D that we did back in April. This is meant to build on that moving forward. And before we get into the content, I do want to mention something else that Scott had alluded to, which is during that session in April, I spent a significant chunk of time talking about how emerging AI tools and the proliferation of those tools has introduced a lot of new ethical dilemmas surrounding the use of AI and a lot of challenges that come along with that. The way that I chose to ultimately frame it was, with great power does come great responsibility, and that AI tools are really only as safe as their most dangerous users. A lot of you had indicated in survey feedback after the session that you would be really interested in exploring more on the topic of ethics in AI. So in September, we will actually do that live in person at Learning Live. There's a session about AI ethics and learning and development. And in that session, I will also be introducing our openly licensed framework for generative AI usage. This is a framework policy for businesses, schools, and organizations to use as they build their own. Not to spend too much time on this, because I know you're here for one topic. The policy is essentially, I think that these tools are really powerful. I think that they have a lot of promise, and I think that they give you a huge competitive advantage if your business, school, or organization can use them responsibly. But using them responsibly is really the key, and the policy is meant to provide guidance to end users on how to use technology responsibly, as well as what are the consequences for not doing that. A few quick notes before we get into the session. These are more just prefaces. The first is that I am going to break one of my presentation design rules, and I'm going to have a lot of text on screen from time to time. I try not to do that because from a cognitive load standpoint, when you read, there's a voice in your head that reads to you. And that voice and me speaking are competing for your attention, and one of us will ultimately lose. So I would encourage you to not read everything. I'll do my best to call out what's important when there's a lot of text on the screen. But my expectation is not that you read everything. In fact, because I'm sharing my screen from a computer likely thousands of miles away from you, it's entirely possible that you won't even be able to read the text in some instances. So no worries. I don't expect you to partake in novels today. The other thing I wanted to share is that examples are not necessarily endorsements. I am going to share some tools and platforms here that I think are excellent exemplars of what I'm talking about, of types of AI that can support learning and development work. But it does not necessarily mean that I'm saying, yes, go get this thing. This thing is amazing, like full endorsement, pay for it. That's not what I'm saying. These are just really strong examples, I think. So even if I like a platform, does not necessarily mean that I'm saying you should go out and use the exact same platform. As a core baseline, let's talk a little bit about AI in general. I recognize that many of you did come to the Rise of AI and ChatGPT session back in April, but some of you may not have. And if you did come to the one in April, it is July now, so it's been quite a while since then. Just as a quick refresher so that we all have a common baseline to work from. In terms of 3 things to know about AI, what I like to explain to folks is that AI is an agent. An agent is an app that helps other apps run. It usually runs behind the scenes as part of an app that you're opening. The example that I gave at the time was if you open the weather app on your phone, the reason that it's showing you the most recent up-to-date weather for your location is because it's using multiple agents or apps that run behind the scenes to regularly check out where is your location and then go to your national weather services or whatever your weather data source is and get the most recent weather information for that location. So AI is an agent. It usually runs behind the scenes in support of another app, but it's an agent that demonstrates some level of intelligence. So it thinks about problems or situations in the same way that a human would. And the way that I break this down to steps for folks is if you deploy an AI agent into an environment, it's sort of like you doing a jigsaw puzzle. So an AI agent, when it's put into an environment, it makes observations, it decides or makes decisions based off of those observations, and based off of those decisions, it acts. And the reason this is like a jigsaw puzzle is because if I lay all the pieces out on the table in front of us, I will observe those pieces, decide when 2 of them fit together, and then act by moving them together. And that's essentially how AI works when you deploy it into an environment to solve a problem. So I think it would also be helpful to have a really quick baseline for ChatGPT or generative AI in general. I try not to go too technical in these presentations to the point where I joke, and this is true, I am not going to tell you what GPT stands for because it feels a little overwhelming if you are not super in the weeds about technical things. But at its core, ChatGPT is an AI chatbot that uses a form of AI called a large language model. And how these forms of AI work is they analyze incredibly large sets of data to identify word associations in different contexts. In other words, what is the likelihood that multiple words appear together within a certain context? So if I tell a voice assistant like Siri, I'm looking for a farm of me, it can analyze those words and realize that those words do not appear together very often. In fact, that's kind of a weird sentence. So then it can look for similar sounding words that might have a stronger association with one another, like I'm looking for a pharmacy. And the technical term for this is technically called text perplexity. In other words, is it weird that those words appear together or not? And we'll get into this in the ethics session in September, but there was a study that came out less than 2 weeks ago that found that non-native English speakers are being flagged as cheaters at a higher rate by GPT detectors, and that those flags are incorrect. They are being falsely flagged as cheating or plagiarizing work. And it's because that text perplexity is assuming that the AI is going to create simpler sentence structures and use a more limited vocabulary, just as folks who are learning another language would. But that is the idea there. And ChatGPT is a conversational AI, so it's a chat style interface with some level of personality. And I have a little screencast here of me asking ChatGPT, what is ChatGPT? I did not speed this up. I didn't edit it. This is all playing out in real time. This is generating a response to a question in real time. It's not a pre-canned response, even though I'm asking it to describe itself. So this is a very powerful chat style interface. It looks a lot like a messenger app. It looks a little bit like Slack or Discord if you're used to using a platform like that. So now we have some common definitions of AI and ChatGPT. Let's start exploring the AI landscape beyond ChatGPT by starting with a platform called ChatGPT. And the reason we're going to start here is because it's one of the easiest generative AI tools to learn to use. And the lessons learned when you use this tool apply really well to other tools and platforms. And I'll actually point you towards an alternative if you wanted to try something similar without signing up for ChatGPT. The reason I'm going to start here is the way that you interact with a generative AI determines the level of response that you're going to get, or the quality of the response. And I'll give you an example of that live here in a moment. What it often comes down to, and Terry, I saw you ask what version of ChatGPT are you using? I'll use both 3.5 and 4 in this session. What you put in is usually reflective of what you get out when you ask an AI to do something. So there's been a lot of interest and focus on how do we write prompts for platforms like ChatGPT. It's even got its own term now. It's called prompt engineering, which feels a little grandiose if I'm being honest, but it is what it is. So you are engineering prompts. Really what you're doing is you're shifting from a writing role to an editor role, right? You're not necessarily creating the story. You are assigning someone else to create it for you. And there are 3 strategies in particular that I found to be really helpful for improving the quality of ChatGPT results when I'm writing prompts. So the first is use your words. The more descriptive, the better. You will get a much better response if you are giving a very in-depth, specific type of request. And I want you to think of this as if you were working with an intern, right? And if you gave them a 1-sentence directive on something to write, they would probably not create what you wanted. But if you were to give them a larger context of who is the audience, what is this for, how much writing needs to actually happen, a paragraph, 2 paragraphs, a page, if you give them examples of both good and bad writing, you're going to get much better results. So using your words is really, really important. Playing pretend, also another really important strategy with ChatGPT. We sometimes call this personas or role play. In other words, we're asking ChatGPT to adopt the persona of someone else. That can be a really, really effective tool, because if you think of it as less interacting with an AI and more having a chat, then if you say at the beginning, this is who you are, it will take on that persona throughout the entire chat. Giving it examples is also very, very effective. So it's not just what is really, really good, but also what is really, really bad. Showing it what you do and don't want can be very, very effective. And this applies to multiple AI tools as you're working with them. So again, it means sort of shifting from a writer role to an editor role. And you are all experts in your field. You're capable of critically evaluating someone's work. You're capable of critically providing feedback and suggestions for revision. And that is how tools like ChatGPT work. So what I want to do is hop over to ChatGPT. I'm going to start with the 3.5 model, which is the older model. It is faster, but it's not as great at complex tasks. That is my quick overview of the difference between GPT 3.5 and GPT-4. But with ChatGPT, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a really generic, simple directive, and then I'm going to ask it to take on a persona and give it a little bit more to work with. And we're going to take a quick look at the results. So it's one of those situations where I don't want you to worry about reading everything on the screen. So I'll just kind of call things out as we go. Let's see, did I copy too much? I think I copied too much. All right, and we'll keeps copying some extra stuff. I'm not sure why. Oh, that would be why. All right. My appreciation with your patience. This is a very simple prompt where I'm asking it to develop a 15-week course outline for an Appalachian Studies course. If I could nerd out just for a second, this is off topic, but on topic. Hundreds of millions of years ago, all of our continents mashed together to form a supercontinent called Pangaea. And then when they split apart, there was this enormous mountain range where the fissure between North America and Europe and Africa all split apart. And that mountain range is shared. So about 2 hours to the west of me, 2-hour drive, are the Appalachian Mountains. Those are the same mountain ranges that you'll find on the northern coast of Africa. Those are the same mountain ranges that you will find in the Scottish Highlands. So it's all the same mountain range, which I think is really cool. So when I talk about Appalachian studies, I'm talking about the culture within the Appalachian Mountains in the United States, but it is all the same mountain range going all the way up. So again, this is using the 3.5 model. It's very fast. See, we're already up to week 8 here. And this is all live in real time. I'm not speeding anything up. There's no trick here. This is a brand new chat. It didn't have any new ideas on what was going on there. So we have a wide variety of topics. Offhand, as I'm scrolling through, I'm seeing things like an introduction to Appalachia, Appalachian folklore and traditions. We're seeing 2 weeks on history, 2 weeks on literature, a week on culture and identity, environmental issues, social issues. So it feels a little generic, a little top level in terms of what's available. I am going to start a new chat with a slightly more powerful model, and I'm also going to use a prompt that is a bit longer. I built this with a little bit of a donation from our friends at Appalachian State University, which is in Boone, North Carolina. And this is going to ask GPT to do a couple of things. So first, I'm giving it a persona. I'm telling it that you are one of the best college faculty in the nation and expert in the field of Appalachian studies. So now it knows that when it's creating a response, it shouldn't just apply what it knows, but it should apply what experts talk about when it comes to that particular field. I picked something that was a bit more historical because ChatGPT did not have access to the internet after September 2021. So I'm looking for more historical things. And I'm giving it a bit more context here. I'm letting it know an actual title of the course, which is a seminar on current issues in Appalachian studies. And was there, yep, I had a typo in there. Let me go ahead and fix that, just so I have it done later. And then basically saying, you know, using your expertise in teaching and learning at the collegiate level, as well as your rich background in Appalachian studies and history, develop a 15-week course outline for the following course. So if you compare that to our previous prompt, which was just develop a 15-week course outline for an Appalachian studies course, we're already giving it significantly more. I've also given it, aside from the course title, a description that was borrowed directly from our friends at Appalachian State University for one of their actual courses that they are teaching. And it's giving topic examples within here. So things like mountaintop removal, coalfield labor practices, attachment to place, Appalachian, Scottish, Irish connections, Appalachia and the media. So I'm going to go ahead and start here. I probably should have hit start a little bit earlier because the GPT-4 model is better at really complex tasks. So you can see it's moving quite a bit slower than the 3.5 model. But what we have here is we have an overview of every week. And one thing that I find really interesting about this, it's always a little different every time I generate it, is it's recommending lecture topics for me here, but it's also recommending assignments with readings, like actual readings, down to like who wrote it, which is pretty helpful. So as I'm going through here, you can see that I'm getting much better results. The first time around, I was getting suggestions about, 2 weeks on history, 2 weeks on literature, kind of vague, kind of top level. Week 3 already is incorporating coalfield labor practices, which I specifically said I wanted to cover as a topic. And I'm getting much better results as I'm going through here. So it's even worked in a midterm exam. I could tell it's done generating because it gave me a little, that's Appalachian Studies. There we go, is how it's abbreviating. So the economic future of Appalachia, public health issues. This is a much better along the way. And it's giving me ideas of how I could even work in exams, like a case study analysis of a successful entrepreneurial or conservation project in Appalachia. If I compare that to the results that we just got, do there appear to be more bullet points? Sure. Would I say that this is as specific or as close to what I wanted as the other prompt? No, like this is much closer to what I actually want in terms of an outline. So it's giving me topics, giving me assignment suggestions, making things much easier. So again, what you put in is essentially what you're going to get back out of this session. With that in mind, I want to switch over to another image creation piece of software because there's going to be some overlap here. I know I say working with AI means shifting from the role of writer to editor, but it also sort of means shifting from the role of musician to director. I don't think that there's anyone who would go to a symphony and assume that the director knows nothing about music just because they're telling all the musicians how to play and when to play and how loud to play and when to come in and when to stop. And the same goes for AI. When I'm using an AI tool, it doesn't mean that I don't know how to do something. It means that I know how to do that thing and I want to do it a little bit faster, or I want to offload part of the work that is kind of, let's say, time consuming. You do need to sort of switch modes, though, when you look at different platforms. So if we look at something like Midjourney, which I'll take a look at here in a moment, the way that you write a prompt for ChatGPT is very different from the way you write a prompt for an image generator for a platform like Midjourney. Another really popular one is called Dolly, which is kind of like the movie title Wall-E, but with a D instead. And when you are writing prompts for an image generator, it's not so much this full descriptive example written like a paragraph, but sometimes, when you go to a museum and they have those little cards next to all the paintings and artwork, it's sort of like how those cards are written. It can sometimes feel like a little staccato, a little bit of an odd description where it feels like you're just throwing adjectives at something, but that's essentially how platforms like Midjourney do work. Midjourney is an image generation platform. It works similarly to ChatGPT in the sense that it's trying to figure out what makes sense based off of what it's been trained on. However, I will say it's not fully ready. Image generation technology is not fully ready in my mind in terms of creating sort of hyper realistic things. I'll give you some examples and where they fall short a bit. But when I think about learning and development, usually I want some sort of visual language that's consistent across my courses, and being able to actually generate those instead of having to pay, maybe thousands of dollars that might not be in my budget to get, professional photos done across an entire scene for maybe a lesson that is important, but is not something worth spending thousands and thousands of dollars on just for media. Being able to generate something that creates a consistent visual language is really, really effective. Let me give you an example of what a prompt looks like for an image generator like Midjourney. And so this is one example of a prompt. Botanical illustration, types of tulips, white background, style of Pierre-Joseph Rideau. Apologies if I got the last name wrong. I am going off of my high school French from years ago. This prompt generated an image from Midjourney. Now I'm going to show you two images. I'm going to put them up on screen. So here's the first image. And here's the second image. And I'm going to go ahead and put them side by side. If we just like in the chat real quick, which one do you think was generated by AI? The one on the left or the one on the right? All right, right now it looks like about, I would say 60-65% of the responses are saying the right, and everyone else is saying the left. So with respect to time, I will give you the answer. The one on the right was generated by Midjourney using that prompt. The one on the left is original source material. There are some issues with the one on the right if you look close enough. In particular, I'll call out this spot right here where the leaf actually goes through itself. It's a little bit of a problem. But also, if you zoom in, the text is gibberish. It makes no sense at all. It is an AI's approximation of what text should look like. If I zoom in far enough on this text, you can tell that those are actual letters in the original source material. So I will say it's capable of creating and recreating styles very, very effectively, and this technology is getting very, very good. Now, the user who posted the images I'm about to share did not share their prompt, which is very frustrating when folks don't do that. But they did take the same prompt and they used it a year ago in April 2022, and then they used it in April 2023. So this is the image that was generated from their prompt in April 2022 is of a human man. You can see that there are multiple deformities in the face generation, the ear, the eyes, the nose. The clothes seem to be part of the body rather than a separate entity. This is meant to be the sun. So if we take that exact same prompt and put it into the model a year later, this was the result. And so you can see some pretty significant improvement here. The facial features are much better proportioned and do not look distorted. Ears look normal, right? You can see the individual textures in the beard, which is really impressive. The clothing seems to float above the body, so it actually has its own weight and dimension. And the sun was off to the side, providing some light just to the side of their face. So incredible improvement here. In fact, there are 4 images that I'll share. These are children's drawings. So here's image number 1, image number 2, image number 3, image number 4, and then all 4 together. And if we had a little bit more time, I'd ask you to identify how many you think were made by AI, but the answer is all 4. All 4 were made by AI. You can actually have it pick up multiple styles where it goes from hyper photorealistic, like the image we were just looking at, or even in the style of a child's drawing. I've had mixed results trying to get this to generate, by the way. So sometimes I have an image that I've generated with a prompt and I really want to change it up a little bit to look more like, let's say a child drew it. And I had one where it was a woman at a laptop holding a cup of coffee. And I said, okay, make it look like a child drew it. And instead it made the woman look like a child, which was, it felt weird. It felt weird is what I'll say. Here are some images that I generated from Midjourney in a learning and development capacity. Sometimes you just want a group of folks who are working together in a training environment. The prompt for this was essentially, I want to see a diverse group of folks in a training environment, about 10 people overall. And it generates 4 images at a time. Most AI generators will do that. And then you kind of pick and choose from there. And right now, when it comes to generating realistic photos of people, it is not quite there. I call it like thumbnail ready, because from a distance, most of these look okay. Most of these look pretty good. It's like, wow, an AI came up with that. But when you zoom in, you'll start to notice that there are a lot of facial deformities and a lot of hand deformities. This woman has 3 arms. There are facial deformities, especially when it comes to eyes. It really seems to struggle with eyes for some reason. I'll give you another example here. So if we zoom back out, again, this is what it looks like zoomed out. This is what it looks like zoomed in. It did not come up with a single proper face in here. Everything is heavily deformed and artifacted. This guy right here seems to be like probably the best generated of the bunch, but if you scroll down a bit, his legs physically cannot be here. It's not quite as good as you might expect. So if we zoom out again, where I have more luck with image generators right now, especially when it comes to creating a cohesive visual language for a lesson, is with animation. So even though we still have some of the same issues with artifacting and distorted facial features, this is much closer to what you might expect. And yeah, I do see some conversations in the chat about the cost involved with these. Usually when you find an image generator, it will let you generate a couple of images for free, and then you have like a lifetime limit. And once that limit is up, you would have to purchase a higher level tier. There is a free version through Microsoft Edge, the Edge browser, right now on Windows. It does not work on Mac, but there is a free image generator through Windows that you can use. And sometimes it's tied into other platforms. But while there are some facial deformities in these, because these are animations, these would be really easy for someone with even a passing knowledge of a graphic editing software like maybe Illustrator or something free like that. I think Vectormatic is another one, to modify those to just be simple eyes, or maybe even no eyes, right? Just a simple animation. In fact, I can tell it, hey, when you make an image, generate more like that image. And so I really liked this one. I had generate 4 more. And again, consistent visual style across all of these. I could basically use it to generate more and more and more images based off of this idea, and have that consistent visual language. And it's not just having a consistent visual language, it's sometimes you cannot find the photo that you want, or sometimes the photo that you want is a bit of an abstract idea. Like maybe you want a tortoise and a hare in the middle of a marathon where they're both wearing sweatbands on their heads, and maybe they've got Nikes on, I don't know. But if you want something that's a little bit more abstract, using an image generator can be really, really helpful. We are going to talk about the ethics of this in September. The ethics of this particular technology are very complicated, because these companies have been credibly accused of taking artistic styles from folks who have spent years and years developing those. In fact, let me go see if I have the image in here. Do I have it readily available? If not, I know it's in another tab. Okay, I cannot find it offhand, but we will take a look a little bit later so I can. Oh, no, here it is. Okay. So this image was generated in the style of a contemporary artist. I literally used the artist name as part of the description of what I wanted, and this is what it came up with. And it's not a picture perfect recreation of their style, but it is close enough that it makes me a little uncomfortable, because long term, again, I don't want to take away too much from September, where we're going to have a really nice in-depth conversation about ethics, but I do think it opens up a question about legal liability. Like, is the company that made the tool legally liable? Are the folks using the tool legally liable? How does that work, right? How does that come together? All right. Let me close out of that, and we've got Midjourney in here. Now, when it comes to generating prompts for Midjourney, you actually use a service called Discord, which is a chat-based program to interact with their app. And the thing is that they want an awful lot of stuff to go into your image prompts. So these are a list of parameters. By the way, if anyone's feeling immediately overwhelmed, that is the point of what I'm about to talk about, where you have to add little things like --AR to indicate the aspect ratio of the photos that you're generating. In other words, how should they be sized? Should they be sized like a widescreen image? Should they be sized like a square? And things like quality. What's the quality of the image? Are you just trying to generate an idea? So you might not need it to be really high quality. Maybe you need it to be just normal quality, which the default value is 1. This is a lot to keep track of. Even I don't know everything in here right now. And so I was looking at all this and I was like, this is too much. This is too much to keep track of for a tool that I don't use all that often. So instead, what I did was I made ChatGPT do it. I basically pasted all that into ChatGPT. I explained to it what Midjourney was according to Midjourney, and I basically pasted in the entire basic parameters article. And I said, what do you need to know from me? Like, I expressed a preference if I had one. And then we had a conversation about what I would expect. And then I also even copied in some content from blog posts that I was finding about how to write better prompts, how to write better details. And so yesterday, I literally said a person in a kilt standing atop a hill in the Scottish Highlands. I recognize that that is a very stereotypical thing to ask for, but I was trying. It was like word salad bingo. And based off of that, it came up with a prompt that was a person clad in a traditional kilt standing majestically atop a hill in the Scottish Highlands. The image should capture the breathtaking landscape of the Highlands in the background and imbue a sense of Scottish pride and heritage. And that add on the parameters that I find to be really important, which are the aspect ratio, so its size, its quality, and which version of the model I wanted it to use. And I was able to copy and paste that in. That generated a series of images for me. In fact, I'll hop over to Discord so I can show you the initial response. So this is what it initially came up with, and these are surprisingly good. This is surprisingly good. And what I like about the model is you can ask it to upscale, so make a higher quality version of any of these. You can also ask it, hey, if you have one of these, I want you to go ahead and just make multiple versions of it. So the one in panel 1 looked the coolest to me. You got like the wind blowing there, so it actually feels like there's presence. So if I click on version 1, it'll generate 4 more versions of that particular image. I am going to let this play out in real time. I'm a little hesitant to do this because I want to make sure that we're staying on track with everything. We got about 3 more minutes before I want to switch to the next thing. But this is sort of like if you grew up in a spot where there was not internet and then you got internet, but it was dial-up internet, you will remember this feeling where like the images just slowly load in because you're on a very noisy internet connection. So it's about 31% done. And even when it gets up into the 80s and 90s, it won't look that good. And then it finishes and it looks significantly better. So you can kind of see it coming in to its own here. I'll try and zoom in a little bit on one. You can see it's still pretty rough, pretty artifacted. If I make this larger, it does not look very good. So we're going to let this complete all the way through. You can see about how long it's taking to generate these. And there is a turbo mode, but it requires a little bit more credits. So even at 93% didn't look that great. Now it's at 100 and it looks significantly better. So these are just 4 versions of the same photo using the same types of details, and it comes together really, really quickly. And this is where I think that synergy is really important, because learning to use a tool like this is very overwhelming. But if you can offload some of that learning to your best friend ChatGPT or another AI model, then all of a sudden you have these 2 tools that work together in synergy. And if ChatGPT is coming up with a prompt that's not generating what I want in Midjourney, I just reply back to it and tell it how to improve. Right? Very, very simple stuff. All right. Let's talk about one other thing that I'm really excited about, and that is the sort of potential behind AI. Right now, we've talked about some over-the-counter available things where the app itself is AI. So ChatGPT is an AI product. Midjourney is an AI product. I want to talk about something that's not an AI product, but that uses AI very heavily to change up how workflows work. And I mentioned this in April, but time is literally the one thing that we can't buy more of. We can hire more people, we can buy tools and platforms, we cannot buy time itself. So the idea is, what can AI do to minimize the time that it takes to do, let's say, I don't want to say boring, but I would say repetitive or very time-consuming tasks that are not necessarily that demanding cognitively, right? That might be a fair thing to do. And so one of my favorite apps that I've been playing around with and that I may fully switch over to is a video editor called Descript. So it's Descript. And yep, you can see the name. It's just very small there. And this is a video editor that has heavily leveraged AI-based features to change up how video editing works. This is one of the most time-consuming things that we do from a learning and development perspective, is editing video. And not only that, if you have an end user who is a subject matter expert who is recording their own screencast or their own lecture or something like that, teaching them to edit video is too overwhelming. It's just too much. If I were to look at a traditional timeline-based editor in movie software, and let me see if I can actually, open one up for you on another screen. And then I can show you what that would look like just so that we have an example here. So this is like a very typical movie editor, right? You have your audio and your video down at the bottom in a timeline. If you wanted to break up part of your video clip, you would do something called slicing, right? If you think about the old school film, like physical film, they had to cut the film manually. So that's why it's called a slice, where you break the video into two different pieces. Same thing with the audio. This can feel really overwhelming to anyone who has not done video editing. So what Descript does instead is, it starts by generating a transcript of your entire video, which is not surprising. Most video editors will do that at this particular point. Let me get the demo video out there. By the way, if you download this app, there's a free version, and the demo lesson that I'm looking at right now comes with it. So if you wanted to try this again on your own later, you could. So it generates a transcript, and while there is still a timeline down at the bottom, the way that you edit into Descript is you edit it like you would edit a document. And that to me is much more approachable to folks. So as an example, in this transcript, you can see it says, "Hi, everyone, it's Tiff, and welcome back to my kitchen." And then she says, "I don't smile like that in real life. Why did I do that?" And that's obviously a part of the clip that we don't really want to include, right? If I were editing in a traditional sense, I would have to find that spot on the timeline. I would have to slice on either side of it and then delete that clip out. And some of you are already like, I don't know what you're talking about, right? That's exactly the point. Let me show you how I take that out into Descript. I highlight that text and then I delete it, and now it's gone. That is video editing in Descript. Like, that is its simplest form. And that to me is pretty cool. So AI is generating the transcript. It's also handling the processing of where exactly to cut the video. So that's one thing that you can do in Descript that I think is actually really cool. There are some other things in here that I find to be really, really neat. I have another video from a podcast that I was on where I was editing, and I put the video clips for this in the free resource course, by the way, so you can see what some of these look like. And this was a podcast where I was talking about sharenting, which is like parents who overshare really sensitive personal moments of their kids online, for likes, for clout, sometimes for money if they're involved in ad revenue programs. And one thing that happens is you have just natural filler words, your uhs, your ums, your ahs, and that makes a video feel less professional. So if you are editing in a traditional sense, you have to really, really, really zoom in to the timeline to figure out where was that specific spot, like down to the second, so that you can cut it out. And when you cut it out, it creates a little jump and it feels very awkward. What you can do instead in Descript is there is literally a feature called remove filler words, and it will find all the ums and uhs in the text, and you can replace them. I usually use this feature called replace with a gap clip, because if someone says or a lot, one thing that I usually try and encourage them to do is wait instead. So if you're about to drop an you would instead go, and it looks like you're being thoughtful with your speech, right? So that's what essentially the gap clip does. And I don't know that I thought to share with sound, but all I have to do to replace those filler words, I can do it in bulk. And AI just fixed all of it throughout the entire video. It has looked for those ums and uhs and those filler words and has replaced them with a small gap instead. And I think, do I still have might have to go back into Vimeo. You won't be able to hear it. And that's okay, because the full video is on the resource course. I put it down at the bottom under Descript demos for remove filler words, so you can see the original versus the modified. And when I play these side by side, you're not going to notice any difference between how my mouth moves. Like it will look completely normal, but when I play the original, the ums and uhs will be in there, and when it switches over to the modified, it will instead have little gaps in there where it sounds more like a natural pause. And this is something that is an easy way to clean up video in a way that doesn't require you to learn a lot about how video editing works. So it's a much faster workflow, especially if you need to clean things up and get them out quickly, which is a recurring trouble in learning and development programs. Another thing that I had wanted to point out here is a new feature called eye contact that I think is really, really interesting. And so when it's essentially, if you have folks who are reading from a script, like reading from a transcript, then what it looks like is you can tell as they are looking at a screen, right? You can tell that they are looking at a screen. But what the eye contact feature does is instead it readjusts their eyes digitally so that it looks like they are looking at the screen instead, or looking at the camera instead of a screen or a transcript. So you can see my eyes will change here in a moment. Yeah, and there it is. Now, this is a beta feature. It literally rolled out less than 2 weeks ago. And so I wouldn't leave it on the entire time because like this feels a little off after a while, right? And Descript is web-based. I believe there's a Windows version as well. I saw that pop up in the chat. So I would not use it all the time. I think it needs some refinement to like, because we don't naturally just stare at each other during conversation. But little simple features like that, where I have an SME who is not comfortable speaking without using a transcript, it does not feel as intimate or personal when they are talking because they're not talking to the camera. And we can use AI to help them out with that, where it looks like they are actually talking to the camera instead. Now, if I wanted to, I could break this up into a bunch of little clips and turn on eye contact and turn it off and turn it on and turn it off. But that is another thing that I find to be really, really helpful. One thing that I don't show on here that I think is really fascinating is I can also train it on my voice. So I can give it up to a 30-minute clip to learn what I sound like when I speak. And then when I have a video where maybe I need to change something because the wording is off, I'll wait for this video to, okay, we'll get that out of there. So let's say instead of follow, this was supposed to be further. I can replace that text with something called overdub. As soon as I try and hover over it, it's gonna do the thing. So I can replace it with a feature called overdub where I assign a voice to it. And this is her voice that was included. All right. And I can replace that word with okay, so let's assume that voice is there. I can basically type whatever the new word is supposed to be and it will read it in AI instead. So the AI's approximation of your voice, so you don't have to re-record the entire thing just because you messed up one word. That to me is pretty cool. It's surprisingly compelling in real time because it still looks like you're speaking the word on video, but having these simple editing features powered by AI really does change up how I think about video editing and how I think about how I'm going to use this. And Descript is actually a built-in, it has this built-in screen recorder. So if I'm doing, let's say little screen recordings here, I can make this video a little bit larger. There I am. Wow, this is very grandiose. All right, so I'll put myself back to normal size there. But this is like a built-in screencasting tool as well. You can record video in here. You can record screencasts. You can bring in your own video. And there's some really cool things you can do in here. And I saw Richard mentioned 11 Labs, but I do really, I love that product too. It's another service that lets you create a voice based off of your voice, like an AI-powered voice. And I talked about that one in April. It's very compelling. I do wish that Descript had a little bit of a tie-in, but to me, this is a really good example of where our workflows begin to change as we create learning and development artifacts and products and assessments, because these things make development easier. They make it less time-consuming. They solve problems that have historically been kind of annoying, like someone not looking at the screen because they're reading off of a transcript. Right. And these are all just built into a traditional video editor to make it much easier to use and much faster to use. So this is a very top level overview. Again, Descript has a free tier where it comes with this demo project that will show you a lot of these features and how they work. If you want some of the advanced features, there is, again, all these are freemium. So you get a free tier that's very limited, and then you would have to pay for higher level access to certain things. But I find this to be a really, really compelling sort of platform. But since we are at the 45-minute mark, I want to go ahead and put this screen back up. I've got some contact info for my colleague Ed, who is on the call here. I've also got my contact info. I saw like a really beautiful thing happen in the chat. where folks were just sharing their LinkedIn links. So please feel welcome to connect with me as well. I've got that up on screen. We have our no-cost resource course that Katina's been sharing. So you would just visit the link on here, view our list of courses, and then purchase the Rise of AI course for $0. I'll add more resources from the session in there a little bit later, and I can add in a copy of the slides as well, just so you have access to those. But a lot of this was meant to be live demos. So I will say thanks so much for sharing your time with us. I'll stick around to ask any questions, but I recognize that some of you may need to leave because of the time that we're at. The course name on the LMS is The Rise of AI and ChatGPT. I wanted to keep everything in one spot so that the folks who registered for the course in April just have to go back to one area. That way the folks who are new to this session will have some historical context as well. There is a recording of the previous session. The slides from the previous session are in there, the resources from there. So everything is, I'm trying to make it one-stop shop, even though the name is for the previous session. Scott, were there any questions that really floated to the top that that you were hoping we could catch while we're in here?
There is a question from Louise in the chat, coming from a curriculum development and lecturing background. I wonder what having this technology will mean for individual expertise. She's building a considerable amount of subject matter knowledge prior to developing a course and its component resources, at the same time putting my own personal stamp on it. Will lecturers have to balance time and even laziness against their own subject matter expertise and need to provide a unique learning experience?
I would say yes and no. So this is a very valid concern, and I hear this from a lot of folks who are academically teaching or teaching in general, and even some concerns about, is this a replacement? And I promise it's not a replacement. This technology, for being as smart as it is dumb by human standards. And what I mean by that is, you know, I can mash buttons on a calculator. That doesn't mean that I understand the output. Right. And the same is true for AI tools. If you gave me a graphing calculator and you said, Michael, I want you to graph this algebraic equation, I don't remember how to do that. I had TI 83 plus in high school years ago, because that's my favorite time frame. But I couldn't tell you how to do that right now. But someone who teaches maths, I'm trying to be culturally responsive. Like if you teach algebra to students, if you teach calculus, you probably have a much better idea of how to use a graphing calculator than I do. And that's because you're an expert, not just in the tool itself, but the subject matter. So you understand how to put something into the tool that produces a result that A, is accurate, and B, that you understand. And that's how I view AI as well. It's pretty useless if you don't know what you're doing, or you don't know the subject matter or the subject matter in general. I've had it generate assessment questions for topics that I'm unfamiliar with, and I tested the answers, and about, I would say 35-40% of the time the answers were incorrect. But if I were a subject matter expert for that particular topic, I would be able to catch that. But I can also look at from the perspective of, if I'm an instructor, what takes me a lot of time. If I'm teaching, let's say, 2 sections of the same course, or I'm teaching a course that I also taught in fall, and I'm worried that my quiz questions might be out there, that people might be using them to cheat because they already know the answers, where ChatGPT or a similar service would be really helpful is in helping me remix those questions, to paraphrase them in a new way, to test the same topic, but, you know, frame it differently. Maybe I have new distractors or something like that that it can generate for me in a multiple choice question. So those things are really time consuming to do individually, but through the use of an AI, if you know what you're doing and you know your subject matter, it's much faster and much easier. So it is a delicate balance. I'm sorry, I can't give you a more specific answer, but that's sort of my perspective on it at the moment.
Brilliant. Thank you, Michael. No more questions. I think everybody's just absorbing the amount of your obviously your knowledge, skill, expertise. I think it's mind-blowing with all the things that are changing constantly, daily, weekly, as you know. But thank you so much for today's session. I think a lot of people have taken an extensive amount of new skills they want to put into their L&D programs, what they're looking for to enhance their capabilities as well. So a big thank you to you and the team at Open LMS. It's been an incredible session, and I'm sure everybody has taken so much away. So yes, some amazing thanks in the chat. You should be, very proud, Michael. There's lots of love in the room for you, lots of cheers, lots of applause. So
thank you, everyone.
Again,
that's very kind.
It always opens up our mind to, the things within AI as well. So thank you for giving us your skill and exploring, AI and beyond ChatGPT today as well. So we do look forward to the next time when you will be coming to do another session for Learning Live digital event. And of course, you will be at our Learning Live conference in September, and we'll be one of our guest speakers there on the subject of AI, which is great. And I look forward to seeing you in person in London in a couple of months' time. So again, likewise, big thank you to you, Michael, and the team. And we look forward to seeing you very, very soon.
Sounds great. Thanks so much, Scott. I really appreciated all the work you and Michael and Katina did putting this all together. Thanks so much again.
You're very, very welcome. So on behalf of the LPI and Open LMS and Michael, we'd just like to say a big, big thank you to attending today's Learning Live digital event. And all past recordings can be found on the website, and they are available to LPI members. And if you're not a member already, just head over to the lpi.org and you'll find details of how to become a member, where you can access previous recordings from many, many global professionals on hot topics that we know are we face in our challenges within our L&D professional and within our roles. So again, once you leave the session today, we'll ask you to complete a quick survey so that we can improve upon our Learning Live digital event experiences and to give you more and more of the things that you would like us to deliver within the LPI. So again, I wish you all a very, very pleasant afternoon. Thank you for attending today, and we look forward to seeing you on another Learning Live digital event in the very near future. Thank you and good afternoon.